Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're still streaming out live on X, Rumble, YouTube, also BitChute, as well as Facebook Live and a couple of other platforms. Thank you for joining us, and also for our listeners and viewers at 21st Century Wire. Love to see you guys in the chat room. Amazing. We'll try to interact with you a little bit later in the program. But also, thank you very much to our last guest, Peter Ford, former British ambassador to Syria and Bahrain, and to weigh in on this incredible situation. I mean, I don't really know. We still don't know what to make of it. We're still unpacking what exactly Donald Trump meant, what exactly he was intending to do with that incredible debacle of a press conference with Netanyahu. I mean, just the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is being allowed into the United States and being kind of feted like some kind of emperor as soon as he arrived, seeing that he is wanted for war crimes and crimes against humanity with the ICC, the International Criminal Court, but just kind of like roundly rejected by the civilized world based on what Israel's done. But the U.S. has backed it every step of the way and still has this slavish loyalty to Israel. And it's really hard, besides the fact that politicians are being paid to have those views. Do you think if Miriam Adelson didn't shove $100 million or 200 million or whatever the lobby in total, I think it was 234 million in terms of Israel-related lobby contributions, $250 million into the Trump campaign. Do you think he would be, onward Christian soldiers marching to defend Israel, give them whatever they want, if they weren't putting money in the coffers? Do you really think? I don't think so. It's purely transactional, and this is what we have as a president, a transactional president. And because Donald Trump is a transactional president, the system is falling apart, because the system that was built after the Second World War, in the wake of World War I and World War II, is more than just a transactional system. So it's interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment, because I think this is worth unpacking. But this is probably one of the most disturbing things that came out of this debacle this week. Here we go. You're probably thinking, what on earth is that? Well, that's a gold pager, which was given by the visiting Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, sitting there with a big smirk on his face. He gave this as a gift to Donald Trump. The gold brass plate inscribed says, "To President Donald J. Trump, our greatest friend and ally, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu." And so that's a gold-plated pager on the cross-section of what looks like an olive tree, I think stolen from Lebanon. So this is a replica, or it was one of the pagers that killed 37 Lebanese and injured thousands of others, including innocent bystanders, children, women, etc. Supposedly, this was to target Hezbollah. Okay, Hezbollah, the terrorists, Hezbollah. This was an actual terrorist attack by Israel. And it's one of the most kind of underhanded, disgusting kind of things that only is made worse by the fact that he's playing this prank on Donald Trump. And I don't know what's worse, the person giving it or the person receiving it, but this is a real gangster move by Netanyahu. He's gloating over the dead in Lebanon. He's gloating over the dead in Gaza. He believes that he's won, and he's very close to achieving his life's work and the work of the state of Israel and Zionists everywhere, a complete expulsion of the native Palestinian population. It's not enough to steal their homes and their land, but they have to be, and it's not enough to genocide them. You have to ethnically cleanse them. And so that's what this kind of typifies here, the symbolism of this gift, if you want to call it that. It's just a deranged sort of a sick person does this. But you're dealing with basically a gangster. Israel is a mafia state. It is a gangster state. It's a rogue state. It sits outside of all international norms, and proudly so. And it will kill and steal and pillage and loot and massacre whoever it wants, whenever it wants. And nobody's going to stop them, because they have the total sponsorship of the United States as the global superpower. But, you know, it's things like this that reduce U.S. influence. It's things like the relationship between Israel and the United States that undermine American hegemony. And that's the irony of it all. And give you a perfect example. Look at this. I mean, the United States is sanctioning the International Criminal Court because they dared to indict Benjamin Netanyahu, that criminal sitting next to Trump with the smug look on his face. Okay. And so Trump said, oh, you can't do that. And basically, there's no merit to the case. Of course, there's merit to the case. The case is also in the International Courts of Justice. Have you not looked at the evidence file, Donald Trump? Instead of just taking the Israeli lobby's word for it, or whoever else is in your ear, Miriam Adelson or whoever, or your son-in-law, Jared Kushner, telling you, oh, no, we haven't done anything wrong. And all those dead civilians, there's not that many dead. Hamas is putting up fake numbers. And even if there are collateral damage, it's their own fault because they haven't overthrown Hamas. It's just like really stupid kind of tropes and all kinds of logical fallacies all rolled into one. And so what he's doing here is basically sanctioning the ICC. He's sanctioning, what is the ICC, the International Criminal Court? Now, the United States and I think Israel as well, and a few other countries, Russia included, they're not signatories to the Rome Statute, so they're not members of the International Criminal Court. So they could just easily ignore any arrest warrants, which is kind of like Russia does, although Vladimir Putin can't travel to certain countries for fear that because he's been indicted, it's a fallacious case, by the way, the one they've tried to nail Putin on, but he can't travel to certain countries without risk of potentially having that warrant exercised, which would be a disaster for Russia. So it's kind of kept him pretty much in Russia and only to friendly countries that he knows won't do one over on him, like China, for instance. But that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep people from traveling and to isolate leaders. It's the ICC, and that's exactly what the intention of the indictments of Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, and Benjamin Netanyahu are. It's basically to ground them while the gears of justice slowly grind on, and hopefully some sort of accountability or responsibility is realized against what happened in the last 15 months. But by sanctioning your allies, 120 something people, members of the ICC countries, and then going after individuals, judges, people that are just doing their job, the evidence is overwhelming. To deny it and say that there's no evidence is a lie. It's dishonest, and it means you have no integrity, you have no decency, you have no honor. You yourself are just a gangster if you think that there's no merit to the ICC case. They should have filed it long before. Now, it's amazing that they did, as Peter Ford said, our previous guest. Amazing. Peter Ford, former ambassador, British ambassador to Syria and Bahrain, very much knows the Middle East and geopolitics extremely well, as he does diplomacy. And he also pointed this out in the previous segment. And these are all really important points. What he's done here is this is going to reduce U.S. power. So the U.S. thinks it's exercising power by attacking all of these multilateral institutions. Okay, the United Nations defunding UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency that works in occupied Palestine, that works in Gaza to provide aid. Israel created a fake story that UNRWA was a terrorist organization, which is fake. It's a lie, and it was designed to cut off aid. It was designed to punish and starve Palestinians who were already under siege, and the U.S. went along with the lie. And so they're defunding the UNRWA, UN, pulling out of the UN Human Rights Council. Of course, they don't want to be involved in any human rights activity because they're co-belligerents in a genocide. So they're breaking down all of these institutions. These are all institutions, the UN, even the WHO, which I don't have any time for the WHO, but the pharmaceutical lobby in America, the WHO is the biggest sales and marketing arm of big pharma globally. The WHO is used to basically sell vaccines through all these other Gavi and all these NGOs. They're basically running product through there. Okay. Now, the WTO, trade relations, all of these things. So by undermining all of these institutions, these institutions are how the U.S. projected and exercised power through these institutions, even though they're not a signatory to the ICC. The United States arguably helped to found the ICC, uses the ICC, even though they're not a member, to attack enemies of the United States government in Africa. All black leaders. There's no white indictments. All black Africans. All the cases, except for Putin. He was the first. He's the DEI, broke the glass ceiling. First white man to be indicted by the ICC. So I'm making a joke, but I'm not actually. But the U.S. needs these institutions, and we'll bring up on screen. This is interesting article here, Foreign Affairs Magazine. This is the tabletop quarterly or monthly of the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. And this is one of their big think pieces, the price of Trump's power politics, why China and Russia stand to win in a might makes right world. It's a very interesting piece. Now, mind you, of course, these are arch globalists, but they're also very well schooled in international relations. The authors include one of the directors or sort of permanent fellows of the CFR, as well as a former U.S. ambassador to NATO. Okay, so they're not slouches, but what's the point that they're making? And this is interesting. Let's take a look at that point. So they're saying Pax Americana is gone. Born with the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the U.S.-led international rules-based order died with the second inauguration of Donald J. Trump. Now, I will argue with that last sentence, and I'll say it was the U.S. rules-based international order wasn't born on 1941 with Pearl Harbor. What was born after the Second World War is the U.S.-led global order, okay, liberal internationalist global order. Now, we can debate about IR theory and how to frame this argument in this debate, but I will also argue that even some of the great experts, if you will, in this topic, as you can see, this think piece, that there's aspects of this I think that they get slightly wrong. Of course, that's up for debate, isn't it? We'll go back, and I'll explain in a minute. And they're saying the president has long maintained that this order disadvantages the United States by saddling it with the burden of policing the globe and enable its allies to play it for a sucker. The post-war global order is not just obsolete, Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared at his Senate confirmation hearing. It is now a weapon being used against us. Now, I don't know what to make of that statement, whether Marco Rubio is just being intentionally dishonest here. But to say that, and let's be clear about framing our definitions, the rules, I'll tell you about the rules-based international order. That came later. That term came later. What happened after the Second World War with the establishment of the United Nations and so forth, that is the U.S.-led liberal internationalist world order, okay? The post-World War II, U.S.-led liberal internationalist world order, comprised of all of these multilateral institutions that came after the Second World War, after the various treaties were signed, after the formation of the United Nations and all the various agencies nested below it as it built itself out in the 20 or so years following the Second World War. But that U.S.-led post-World War II liberal internationalist world order is underpinned by a rule of law, not a rules-based international order. No, rule of law, international law. So what happened was, after the Cold War, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of history, as Francis Fukuyama famously declared it, the U.S. Became the unipolar hegemon after a bipolar power-sharing globe between the Soviet bloc, communism in the East, and the capitalist, liberal Western economies. Okay, that was a bipolar world order. It became a unipolar world order after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the United States became the sole hegemon. Marco Rubio himself talked about this in his interview with Megyn Kelly. It's very interesting to hear somebody actually articulate this in the U.S. government. I mean, we're used to hearing people on YouTube, John Mearsheimer and all these other great IR scholars discuss these things, but you'd never hear it from anyone in Washington in any kind of high office. All they're doing is basically starting wars and chastising everybody and waving their finger. So I, for one, was shocked that Marco Rubio was even talking about this, like a post-U.S. dominated world. What does that look like? He said it's a multipolar world. I was a bit shocked. Of course, this program and the people that we're running with around and our intellectual and media circles have been talking about multipolarism and BRICS and things like this for many years. But still enough, it's shocking enough to hear it coming from Donald Trump's Secretary of State, when we assume America first means America, not just America first, but America dominating everybody. And everyone has to be subservient to America, and any emerging superpowers will be dealt with. Thucydides' trap. So let's get the terminology right. And they're lamenting that Trump is basically killed this. But I will argue that this was killed before Donald Trump was sworn in. Okay. The last administration, Joe Biden's administration, finished it off well and truly. But this process began with, you could say Bill Clinton, Yugoslavia, the dismemberment of creation of this Kosovo, and that's breaking international law, international norms, and things just deteriorated from there. Then the Iraq War, of course, 20 odd years occupying Afghanistan, when Afghanistan did not attack the United States. The argument is it harbored Osama bin Laden. It didn't attack the United States. It's ridiculous. Once bin Laden was supposedly gone or liquidated or fled to Pakistan or whatever the story was, that should have been the end of it. No, but they had to occupy and make a business out of it. And Donald Trump's been saying for years, even before he got into politics officially, that they're ripping us off. They're ripping us off. We're paying for their defense. Germany, Japan, they're taking advantage of us. Why are we paying to be the world's policeman? It's a very popular talking point. Okay, very popular talking point, but it's a bit shallow, because Japan might not be paying for us to be in Okinawa and occupying, South Korea and Guam and all of these islands in the Pacific. And how many bases do we have? How many nuclear weapons do we have stationed around the world? Germany, or militarily occupied Germany, before it was to protect it from the Soviet Union. Okay, fair enough. Likewise, to protect Japan for the same reason. Fair enough. So after the Iron Curtain fell, we're still there. We were there. That was the post-World War II peace dividend. Okay. Donald Trump, I've never heard him articulate this, because maybe this concept's too broad and deep for Donald Trump. We got more out of that in terms of running a global empire We militarily occupy Japan, forbid it to have any national military. Same with Germany. Means they're never going to rise as a military power. We give them, we don't have to pay for reconstruction, but we have kind of a partnership. We open our markets post World War II, the 1950s baby boom, consumer boom, to German and Japanese products. They built up their economies, right? Japan, what does it do in return? A lot of things. Not only do we get advanced, affordable, top of the range consumer goods in America, but Japan's buying US debt. Japan's buying US debt. Japan's buying T-bills. Japan is helping to prop up the United States world reserve currency. That's worth more than paying for military services, like Donald Trump talks about. Okay. Germany, similar. But and he's saying, well, Saudi Arabia, why are we paying for Saudi Arabia? It's they're taking advantage of us. That is just so childish to even make that statement. The petrodollar, the end of Bretton Woods. Donald, do you know what that is? Do you remember? Do you know the dates? Do you want to should we do a history seminar? Basic history seminar. I know a lot better historians, way better than myself. Michael Hudson or someone like this, and a top economist can explain it to you, Donald, if you can keep up. We don't owe Saudi Arabia anything. Saudi Arabia has propped up the United States dollar. Saudi Arabia's pumped, I don't know how much, into New York and Wall Street and some of the biggest banks in the world. And that's part of our arrangement with Saudi Arabia. They are scratching our back and have been for a long time. The power of the United States is not in its guns, its bombs, or its air force. The power of the United States is not military preponderance. It's financial preponderance. And we rely on partners who are cooperating with us and not necessarily competing with us. They are dependent on us. They're dependent more than anything on the world reserve currency. We do back that up with military power. We back up the financial preponderance with military preponderance. But we don't lead with the military. We lead with the dollar. And all those dollars around the world are out there, sunk into various dollar sinks around the world, in industries and economies and countries and reserve accounts. And that props up the dollar. So that's why we don't have massive hyperinflation at home. And this means we're able to print as much as we want. Deficit spending is buttressed by the fact that the United States has the world reserve currency. There's a $37 trillion national debt and is never going to be paid back. It doesn't need to be paid back so long as the US dollar remains the world reserve currency and is the most liquid form of exchange and the most used currency and is out there in circulation in a big way. Okay. That's why we're able to deficit spend. And if you deficit spend, it means you can have $1 trillion military budget, even though you can't afford it. Hence, you can project power, control markets, open up markets for your products if you want. Allows you to sanction everybody on the planet because they're all using dollars. This is how it works. Okay. That's the system that's made the United States number one. It's allowed it to punch above its weight, and it's allowed it to not have to observe international norms or international law. And when you do that for long enough, things start slowly falling apart. People don't respect you anymore. People won't cooperate with you anymore. And when you start attacking your own allies, sanctioning your allies, which is what the U.S. is doing, this is indicative of the fall of any empire. So you're sanctioning your allies as well as your enemies. You are basically paring down your deep state at home and away. USAID, as big of a scam as it is, and notice they're only talking about certain things it's funded, every other things are quiet. No one's talking about the white helmets. How many tens of millions of dollars were pumped into that terrorist adjacent fake search and rescue outfit in Syria that was basically producing propaganda for CNN and the BBC and all the news outlets to sell a dirty war against Syria and to help recruit jihadists to go fight there. That's also part of their function. Okay. That was USAID funded. Both parties taking pictures with the white helmets as they do their tour in Washington to raise money. You know, they were at it before Zelensky. They probably could have taught Zelensky a thing or two in terms of PR. That's just one example. But USAID has its tentacles in all these countries. And while it's trendy, and I'm kind of laughing because America first, America number one. Well, if you kill USAID, you kill one of America's most potent and powerful weapons. It's not soft power is media, NGOs, and USAID is smart power. Smart power. That's a term coined by Joseph Nye. I believe he was a advisor to Bill Clinton, foreign policy advisor, and a great academic in the international relations field. He coined this term smart power. So George Soros is engaged in smart power. Elon Musk rails against George Soros. Oh, George Soros is funding the radical left. Yeah, he's doing all that. But George Soros works for the CIA. George Soros works for Uncle Sam. George Soros runs parallel to USAID and Central Intelligence Agency to destabilize, to undermine, to overthrow governments. It's just another channel. He's allowed to be who he is, provided he does things for Uncle Sam, to help Uncle Sam. That's what George Soros does. Provides cover and funds the same organizations as the USAID. It's all they're all on the same team. It's not right, left, Democrat, conservative, progressive. No, this is Team America has multiple wings. Okay. But the way it's the cartoon, childlike way that it's tweeted about by Elon Musk is to get you into right, left, to get you into Democrat, Republican, or conservative, new conservatives that just became conservative in the last to jump on this MAGA train, who are all Democrats every other election before this. That's pretty much half of Trump's cabinet, and they're smart. They saw which way the wind was blowing, and they switched tact on their sails, including Elon Musk himself, who was lobbying for carbon taxes, wanted you and I to pay carbon taxes and buy his electric cars. They're supposedly to save us from climate change, which is a scam. And of course, he's a career Democrat, but he's not going to be held accountable for all of that because he's made his billions and now he's in a different position, more powerful position. And now he's conservative. So all this is going to result in the loss of international influence by the United States, and more importantly, access to networks, international networks that are based on cooperation, not intimidation, not transactional bullying, okay, not zero-sum politics. It's based on cooperation, shared values in terms of you if you're the hegemon, you want other people to buy into the system, you have to at least pretend to care about it. You have to at least pretend to give it lip service. You have to fund it. You have to contribute to it. Okay. And if you do that, all of these other smaller countries are working for you. So Trump's come in like a bull in a china shop, and he's got his guys, and they think they're running with certain talking points, but there is a kind of a geopolitical reality underlining it. There are a few people that are probably smart enough to work some of this out. But in institutions, multilateral institutions, and NGOs, they're important. But if they're no longer cooperating with the U.S. because the U.S. doesn't fund them anymore, they'll get their funding from other sources, and then that network will be used by other people, maybe China, maybe Europe. Okay, and the U.S. will ultimately lose access to markets, because this is what these institutions do by being in them and manipulating them, paying for them the way the US does. It opens up markets for US companies, businesses, products. So what good is it of Trump wanting to make America a manufacturing hub if there's going to be more markets closed to American products? And also people that want to get out of the dollar because they're being threatened with sanctions, or their big trading partners or neighbors are being threatened with sanctions, so they want to get out of the dollar. So who's the U.S. going to sell to? It's certainly not going to make cheaper products, that's for sure. Not with the cost of labor in the United States. The United States has the most expensive labor in the world. Salaries are through the roof. Cost of living is the most expensive country in the world by orders of magnitude. Do you think it's going to produce affordable products for the world? There's some structural problems with the United States now. It is a victim of its own success over the years. Its own success. I'm talking about having the world reserve currency, the US dollar. US may have reached its peak already, but Trump and everyone's saying this is the golden age of America. Again, the Gilded Age, again, like the turn of the century with the robber barons and the Rhode Island breakers and the Age of Innocence and et cetera, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and so forth. We're back to the Gilded Age. So now it's big tech, fabulously wealthy, and the middle class is getting gutted, and you're getting an underclass and a sub-underclass that's swelling, and the wealth gap has never been greater. And they're telling you that things have never been better. Everyone's maxed out on credit cards. That's where the US is at the moment. That's the reality. People can't afford to buy homes. So Donald Trump is going to try to manage this process. So, but what we're trying to tell you is there are things like treaties, missile defense treaties, cooperation agreements, things that actually mean something. I'll give you an example. Donald Trump touts as his #1 success, the Abraham Accords. And you hear this on Fox every 5 minutes. I mean, these people, it's just on heavy rotation. Oh, they brought peace. The Abraham Accords brought peace to the Middle East. They'll sit there and say that with a straight face on camera, like every 5 minutes. These people are completely off their nut. How did the Abraham Accords bring peace to the Middle East? It didn't even bring peace to Palestine. The Abraham Accords caused October 7th. This is a proven fact now. This is kind of documented now. But everybody knows that who's paying attention, but nobody on the right in America knows that because they're brain plugged by Fox. And they're in an incredible Zionist echo chamber. The Abraham Accords were a patent failure. They were a joke. They're laughed at by most people in the Middle East because it made the mistake. Jared Kushner, the president is a victim of his own doing by relying on nepotism, by giving important things to his son-in-law to do when his son-in-law is clearly an incompetent, who's completely immoral, who I'll play you a clip. Jared Kushner, interesting guy. So he had something to say about Gaza, and this just kind of illustrates a point here. Let's see if we can bring this. Listen to this. This is the president's son-in-law who's been put in charge of Middle East policy. Okay. I mean, I thought they'd keep Amos Hochstein going because he successfully organized a genocide. But here's Jared Kushner. Let's bring this video to play here, and listen to what the president's son-in-law has to say. And so you're wondering, when Trump gave that crazy speech about the U.S. taking over Gaza and turning it into Dubai, beachfront hotels, resorts, and turfing out the native population, marching them to the Sinai Desert, like the United States government marched the Cherokees to Oklahoma in the Trail of Tears. That's basically what Kushner is basically advocating for. I mean, it's kind of insane. Here he is in his own words, by the way. Let's listen to this.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable to, if people would focus on kind of building up livelihoods. You think about all the money that's gone into this tunnel network and into all the munitions. If that would have gone into education or innovation, what could have been done? And so I think that it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there. But I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. But I don't think that Israel has stated that they don't want the people to move back there afterward. The thing that I would try to do if I was Israel right now is I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. I know that won't be the popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do, so you can go in and finish the job.
Wow. So, get in there, finish the job. So he's basically openly calling for ethnic cleansing of the native Palestinian population. This is somebody who's like deeply immoral, doesn't care. They're just basically in the way. Bomb them, bulldoze them, and then put up some tents in the Negev desert where I don't know how many tens of thousands will die there, exposed in the elements. I mean, how barbaric can you get? And he'll sit there and say this with a straight face, like it's this civilized, some sort of polite conversation. I mean, it's kind of disgusting. There's something vulgar about it, something immoral. And you think, well, how can people be like that? And when you see things like this, it kind of makes sense. You're dealing with gangsters and charlatans and thieves. That's who you're dealing with. Gangsters, charlatans, and thieves. And sadly, Kushner is one of them. He's married into the Trump family, and you just heard it right from the horse's mouth. Get rid of them. What, 1.8 million, 2 million, doesn't matter. We'll kill couple 100,000 of them. We've already done that. They've already done that. Killed a couple 100,000, and the rest we'll force out at gunpoint or with threat of further genocide. And it needs to be done because that's really good real estate. Have you seen those beaches? They're beautiful beaches. Imagine what it could be. It could be like Dubai. We just have to get rid of the natives. We got to get rid of the natives. They're in the way of this great development project. These Palestinians, I mean, they were there when we arrived and they just wouldn't go away. We shot at them, we killed them, we raped them, we did everything we could, and they're so stubborn. Why don't they just go to Saudi Arabia and let us live in peace? That's what the Israelis say. Why don't they just leave to another Muslim country? Let us live in peace in our holy land that God promised us. Our God, who's an estate agent, who's a real estate agent, somewhere up there, Century 21, gold coat, that's our God. He promised us this land a couple thousand years ago, apparently, according to some book that somebody wrote. Yeah, totally legit. People living there for a couple thousand years, well, they don't really, land doesn't belong to them. They have no rights. They're subhuman. It's not hyperbole. That's the actual score, folks. That's like actually what's happened. So that's kind of what you're dealing with there. I've got this clip of the presser between Netanyahu and Trump, and let's listen to this for a moment. It's really important to get the details of this. There's something in this that is just not right. And it's, unfortunately, this is on Trump's side. So apologies in advance for any MAGA adherents, but there's a little bit of a problem here. Let's listen to this and listen closely to what he says, and then I'm going to comment on it afterwards.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
So I don't know where to start exactly there, but he said some things that are just patently false. One, it hasn't been like that for 100 years, Donald. Starting in 1948, we could start the clock from there, to be honest. So that's just an inability to conceptualize basic history and timelines. But the thing that really kind of is disturbing about what Trump said is what he didn't say. And so he goes on saying, well, it's a pile of rubble. The only reason the Palestinians are there because they have nowhere else to go. No, the reason they're there, well, they are being penned in the world's largest concentration camp, but by who? By Israel, by the man standing next to you, Donald Trump, the man standing next to you, that mafia don standing next to you. That's why they're penned in the world's largest concentration camp. And why is it a pile of rubble? Why is it a pile of rubble? You just gloss right over that. Oh, it's a terrible place, nothing but death and destruction. Well, how did it get that way? The fact that you left that out, that really important detail, that important bit of context. The reason it's a pile of rubble, because Israel made it that way with U.S. weapons. Both of you, and you're representing the United States. I know you're not Joe Biden. You're not Genocide Joe, but you just rubber stamped everything Genocide Joe did, Donald J. Trump. It's the United States of America and Israel, the reason it's a pile of rubble, the reason they're still pulling bodies out from it, bodies of children. There's still arms and limbs hanging out from concrete slabs still. The Lancet peer-reviewed journal in Britain estimated the true death toll. After all is said and done, they sift through everything. It's going to be north of 200,000, much higher than 200,000. Excess deaths, in addition to direct deaths from Israel's carpet bombing of the most densely populated area in the world, which is why it's in the international courts of justice for genocide. Get it through your thick head, Donald. Did you not? What part of this doesn't compute? And you just ignore it, gloss over it. Oh, it just became a pile of rubble, just as if by magic. Nothing to do with us. Certainly nothing to do with this lovely man over here, Benjamin Netanyahu. Wonderful man. Sweet man. A man of peace. A man of peace. No, a gangster and an absolute butcher and a wanted war criminal that you gave a king's welcome to in Washington, D.C. Shameful. Bad look. Really bad look for America in perpetuity. Unbelievable. So it just understand for a moment what you've created, okay? The Palestinians, what they've had to endure, this is how they're living, okay? That's how they're living. That's their day-to-day life. They didn't ask for that. They don't deserve that. That's how they're living. The United States and Israel made that happen. Not by accident. It was intentional. The U.S. is a co-belligerent in a genocide, a war against people who are under occupation. How cruel and unusual is that? And look at these people still getting up every day. Now juxtapose that to, neurotic people in Washington, D.C. and New York City who are on antidepressants because they broke a nail. The Palestinians, born warriors. You've made the next generation of born warriors with what you've done to these people. Make no mistake about it. And their ranks of resistance will have 10x'd as a result of what Israel and the U.S. did the last 15 months. I'm just calling balls and strikes and telling you how it is. That's just how it is. And there's no amount of rationalization or denial or gaslighting that you can do to get around that absolute fact. And I'm sorry to break it to you. If this is like news to anybody, I apologize in advance. You don't watch this show enough. Those of you who watch this show, none of this is surprising to you. You've heard it before, you've seen it before, you absolutely understand and you get it. And we need more people like that. So, it's just when you see a person like Netanyahu with Donald Trump, and it just reminds you that money can't buy class. You can be a billionaire. You can be the richest man in the world. In the case of Elon Musk, he had to go suck up to Benjamin Netanyahu when he arrived this past week. Musk. He had to go out to suck up to him in Israel and do the October 7th propaganda tour. And he got dragged to Auschwitz by Ben Shapiro. Okay? Doesn't matter how much money you have, whether you're a billionaire, whether you're the richest person in the world, money doesn't buy class. That you still have to go and basically suck up to a war criminal and a gangster like Benjamin Netanyahu. Could easily be put in his place. A killer. Someone who's just gloating, making jokes about all the people he's killed and maimed here. Giving that to the President of the United States. And the President of the United States may or may not. I don't know what Donald Trump thinks about this gift. I would be very disappointed if he thought it was really funny and cool. I would like to think that's kind of an insult to a U.S. president. This is like so lowbrow. No class. Benjamin Netanyahu has no class. He is a gangster from a mafia state, a rogue state that doesn't even declare its own borders. Israel, it's an entity. It's not a country. Doesn't declare its own borders because it wants to keep expanding. That's why. That's what you're dealing with. So, do you know what's interesting? This is what our history books tell us anyway, that there was a League of Nations after the First World War, and that Nazi Germany, the aggression of the Third Reich, broke the League of Nations. It created international crisis. It broke the League. Well, the League was replaced with was the United Nations and the current international system that I described earlier. And what's broken this system? Israel and the United States have broken it. They've done what Nazi Germany did. They have undermined all of the institutions. They have basically nullified international law. They've broken all of the bonds, the crisscross mesh network that was constructed to create harmony or some balance in some accountability, if you will, in the international system. Didn't always work, but now you have just openly, brazenly undermining it and attacking it and attacking people who belong to it now because you think somehow that you're getting a raw deal. I'm talking about the US and the Trump administration. Personally, there's other ways to go about the decline of the United States empire. I would do it a little more gracefully, but maybe this is just the way it's going to be. So this is an ugly exit, but maybe this is just the way it has to be. But it could end very badly for the United States. Because if they carry on being belligerents and attacking people, attacking countries, it won't be long until there's another Pearl Harbor. And this time, this is not 1941. It's not going to be Japanese Zeros with a max speed of 200 miles an hour, or whatever, 150 miles an hour, however fast they flew or slow they flew, off some sluggish aircraft carrier coming out of Midway towards Hawaii with tiny bombs raiding the U.S. base in Pearl Harbor as a preemptive strike. Why did the Japanese attack the United States? You never hear much about that. That's not really up for any discussion. No one's interested in that. Did they just do it because if you listen to if Piers Morgan and some of these single brain cell pundits, if Piers Morgan was alive in 1941 and he had his talk show in 1941, say, Piers, what happened? Well, the Japanese just woke up one day and decided to be aggressive, like Putin, attack the United States because they just wanted to bully us and take our land. They just woke up one day and had this, I want to attack America. No. That situation built up for years before. It was the United States and its allies and Britain that started to strangle Japan economically. Yes. So was it justified? Was it not justified? This is a separate debate and discussion. We can talk about Japan's war with China, and there's a lot of different aspects to this that we could unpack. But my point is, it didn't happen for no reason. There was a thing that caused that to happen. And in 2025, it's not going to be Corsairs versus Zeros. No. We have nuclear-tipped hypersonic missiles. So a preemptive strike from an enemy of the United States in 2025 could be fatal or deadly. And if the U.S. continues to attack and to threaten and even to go to militarily attack Iran, as they're planning to do, at the behest of the Israelis, well, the world might get together and think, we don't like the way this is going. The United States is out of control, and something very ugly and unfortunate could happen there. Did it ever occur to anybody in America that that's a possibility? Because that's the one I would want to avoid. In fact, so many lives have been lost and given and sacrificed from the two world wars and after, in order to preserve some kind of an international system to prevent that from happening, to prevent crimes against humanity, to prevent nuclear Armageddon, to prevent genocide. The Genocide Convention, the Geneva Convention, the United Nations, the Security Council, all these things were to never again. That's why they made those institutions. And look what we've sat and watched in broad daylight for the last 15 months. Live, real-time genocide of the worst, most vile nature. The thing that will break all of these institutions. I just showed you the international courts charging the perpetrators of genocide in the United States is now going to war against the people who are trying to hold the criminals account. That is a breakdown of this whole system right there. Why? Because the Israeli lobby and the billionaire class are paying the U.S. congressmen, senators, president. They're being paid off. And the people who gave them the money want their pound of flesh, the merchant of Venice, in return. This is as simple as that. So that's the reality of the situation. And if we allow, if Europe, that we're told survived the Holocaust and this program and Stalin and this and that, Europe sits back and just like a matador, just lets the bull go through and lets Israel do what they want. In fact, applauding it, as Ursula von der Leyen did at the beginning. And the U.S. will sit there and give standing ovations to Netanyahu, congressmen, senators, and the like, applauding this genocide. So that's Europe and that's the United States, the victors of World War II. And even Germany, shame on them. They should know better. The victors of World War II, the people who constructed the post-World War II liberal internationalist, multilateral, US-led world order. And then this happens, and it's okay, let it go. In fact, it's more vicious than anything anyone's ever seen, and nobody could raise a finger or raise a hand to stop it. That is a failure of not just the institutions, but if that's the apogee, the high watermark of Western civilization, as people like Jordan Peterson are constantly fawning, we're so great in the West, we're so advanced. And he'll sit there and just politely applaud people getting killed on an industrial scale. That's the failure of Western civilization. So it's not just the U.S. empire, but Western civilization, however you want to define it. European civilization, North American civilization, complete failure, total failure. And where that's going to lead, it can't be positive. It can't be positive. The world is not should not be a zero-sum game. But that's how the U.S. is playing and has been playing for quite some time. It's a little more overt and noticeable under Trump. Trump has a magical way of, whether he intends to or not, to expose all the inequities in the system, including the things that he himself is pushing and promoting. And so in that sense, we called it the magic of Trump back in 2016. If you watch this show back then, we've been going much longer than that, but we called it the magic of Trump. That somehow that bull in the china shop just shakes everything loose, even if he didn't intend to do it, even if it wrecks a project, a pet project or two of his own. It wasn't what he intended, but he does have that ability. So the world has to recognize and respond. So, one of the reasons I got on this track is I was talking about the Abraham Accords a few minutes ago. What an utter failure they are. But the emperor has no clothes, and they'll stand there on broadcast network TV and say what a great success it was. Mike Huckabee, who is not impressive intellectually, he'll say that this brought peace to the Middle East. They'll also say that they'll say, oh, we have to attack Iran because we need to take out their nuclear program. Because they're going to make nuclear weapons. We haven't seen them, but the Israelis tell us that they're making them. I haven't seen them, but Bibi assures us that Bibi has been assuring us that they'll be ready in 2 weeks, and he's been assuring us that for the last 15 years or 20 years. So for the last 20 years, Israel's been saying Iran's 2 weeks away from a bomb. So it's been 20 years now, and we're waiting for that bomb. Iran probably has a good reason to develop nuclear weapons now more than ever. But that's because Donald Trump pulled the rug out from under the JCPOA. It was a terrible deal. It was a terrible deal. They're ripping us off. The same old shtick, okay? The 10 countries or something in total were involved in putting together the JCPOA, including the United States. We all expended a lot of energy and money and time and political capital and currency that you won't get back to make a deal that was actually functioning and working, and it had Iran basically fully under supervision and control of the international system, with Russia also guaranteeing it. And what did Trump do? He was ordered by Israel to pull away unilaterally from that agreement, and it collapsed. May 2018. Mike Pompeo was the emissary, the evil emissary that was sent to finish that job off. That was at the behest of Israel. Why? Because Israel doesn't want peace in the region. They want war. They want constant threat. Their regime, the Netanyahu regime, can't exist without a constant state of war. It's analogous to Zionism. Full stop. Constant expansion, constant war, constant conflict. Territorial expansion, buffer zones upon buffer zones upon buffer zones that eventually get absorbed into what the Israelis have referred to as the Greater Israel Project. It's not a topic up for discussion, though, in the United States. It's not allowed to discuss it. They talk about it plenty in Israel, but no, we can't talk about that in the West because it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. It's not a conspiracy theory. So, Bibi Netanyahu, the architect of the Iraq War, the global war on terror, that all came from Israel. Project for a New American Century, clean breaks, foreign policy directive that became the roadmap for U.S. foreign policy for the next 30 years. We're still in that. We're still on the clean break plan. That's Israel. That's the Zionist lobby, 120%. All of it. America first. If it's going to be America first, you have to get out from under the thumb of Israel now. And people say, no, the tail's not wagging the dog. The dog's wagging the tail. Joe Biden said Israel's our outpost in the Middle East. Yeah, of course, this is true. We've used it, but the tail has grown to such a degree that it's now becoming a problem for us, for the U.S., and for the world. The tail is destroying the international system. It's going to destroy the United States, that tail, and when the United States starts to degrade further, it will also destroy the international system, and there could be a high degree of instability and perhaps war that comes with that. All for Israel. All for Israel. A European settler colonial project based on a European problem that was injected into the Middle East. That's kind of what happened. Rather than be honest about it, rather than face the music, everybody's in denial, everybody's obfuscating, everybody's deflecting. Nobody wants to deal with the core of the problem. And the problem is the United States has allowed the Israeli lobby to hijack and to capture its government in the same way that the U.S. government has allowed big pharma and corporations to hijack and capture whole departments, government, and whole reams of policy. Same process. So until the U.S. state or people are able to decouple from that, then we're going to have problems upon problems upon problems. And it's just degraded the morals and norms in the international system to such a degree that nobody's going to have any trust in anything, and you will have that state of nature. And at that point, anything's possible. It's not pretty. We just got a good dose of it the last 15 months in Gaza. That's your state of nature. That's your realist power politics right there. That's what that is. So let's replicate that. What would it be like if we 10x or 50x that around the world? Would that be pretty? Would that be good? Is that going to lead to anything positive? Because it's sort of the direction we're heading, or at least that's what's being endorsed. So I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there, folks, but The last thing I'll say is I would like to think that if there were peace negotiations, if there were genuine efforts on both sides, that these would be negotiations that are done in good faith. And the problem is the United States is not agreement capable. Why would anyone sign any deal with the U.S. when the next administration can come in 4 years and basically pull out of it? And because nobody's bound by any accountability or responsibility or honor or trust in the international system. The U.S. needs to be all of those things if it wants to be a world superpower. Otherwise, it's going to have to get relegated, severely relegated, and maybe relegated in a not so nice way after a third world war or something like that. Nobody wants to see that. We definitely don't want to see that, but there'll be tremendous damage done to all sides if that happens. And the behavior of the U.S. is pushing, using NATO as well as a proxy, is pushing the world towards that type of conflagration. And we hope that, the Trump administration will make serious strides in pulling back from the brink. Certainly, we hope that happens with Ukraine and Russia and NATO and the U.S. But is that going to happen with Iran and Israel? Or is the United States going to exacerbate that situation by its blind, slavish support for a rogue state that's really a mafia state in the Middle East? It's a fair question based on what we've witnessed over the last 15 months and this diabolical press conference we just saw this last week with Trump and Netanyahu. A total embarrassment for the United States internationally. I mean, just to host that miscreant, an absolute gangster and a war criminal, a killer, just to host him in Washington is bad enough. To give him an emperor's welcome. They did this slick propaganda film of Netanyahu, put it on the president's Twitter account. It's just horrific. If there was a Leni Riefenstahl propaganda award in 2025, that would be shortlisted, okay? For the Leni Riefenstahl best propaganda for a rogue regime. Shortlisted. The Netanyahu in Washington propaganda film. Masterpiece. In fact, I feel like I'm insulting Leni Riefenstahl because actually she made some good films, technically at least. But it's just the lowbrow, cheap kind of veneer that surrounds everything with Israel now. It's just insufferable. So if people are ready to negotiate in good faith and are actually willing to commit and see it through and do it honestly and earnestly, that would be great. But as yet, I don't see any indications that anybody's ready to make that step in the U.S. and the Israeli camp. I don't see it. And the further this goes, the worse it's going to get for Israel. Just like the further the war goes in Ukraine, the worse it's going to get for Ukraine. Same thing. The sides that the U.S. is backing, it's going to get worse for them the longer the charade drags on. You see how congruent these situations are. We try to point these things out. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys, suffering this extended monologue, but I think it's good to have these conversations. We used to do this more on the Sunday Wire back in the day when we were on the radio, when we were just audio. It's a little bit different with video, but anyway, once in a while we'll do that. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. It's been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you guys. And we'll put along the bottom there, a winter fundraising drive is happening now. We'll just put our plate up on screen. If you like what we do, if you like the work that we're doing, we really need your support. We've launched the Midweek Wire, which I did a couple of episodes already with Freddie Ponton. Amazing discussions midweek. So that's just an addition to the Sunday Wire. We try to get the best guests we can on Sundays, especially, and during the week, more analysis and sort of, kind of breaking down some of the big issues. And we do an omnibus program every Sunday, and we're streaming out live on all these platforms now. Help us any way you can. I know you guys, some of you have. We really appreciate you, especially some of you reached out to me and said, did you get that donation? I said, yeah, thank you. And we put it to great use. We have a small team of part-timers and people. We have a couple of volunteers as well, and an editor and a sub-editor, including myself. So we have a decent team, and we're producing original journalism and analysis as well as live programming. So if you like what we do and you want to see more of it, support us or subscribe monthly for $5, right around $5, and become a member at 21wire.tv. That's our membership site, which we're currently still working on and hope to launch more features to that in the next couple of months. So we appreciate your patience. And again, support us. This is our winter fundraising drive. This is where we raise the money for the next 12 months. It's a very important time of year. So whatever you can do to help us, we really appreciate it. We'll put it to good use. Again, I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. This has been an epic Sunday Wire, episode 534, I believe, of this weekly Omnibus News Analysis Radio program. We'll be back next week, maybe with our ACR crew, Hesher and Ruckus from the Boiler Room. They'll be joining us as well. So look forward to that. So hopefully we'll have a good session next week. But that's all we've got time for today. Thank you, Peter Ford, ambassador from Syria. Really appreciate your time, your analysis, and thank you everybody who's tuning in. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you hopefully midweek, same channels as here. Take care. All the best.
In the final analysis, we all inhabit this small planet, and we are all mortal.
Lately I've been watching the world gone mad, brothers and sisters full to take a stand, to hate their fellow man and upper man. Divide and conquer is the acronym plan. Distract the people, control the story. Don't believe your lying eyes, you know me. Stay in power, no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gamble your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Corruption and lies. sisters, we're being divided. Don't believe what they say. Hold on to your soul. Everyone divided in an echo chamber hole, saying that the enemy doesn't have a soul. Listening to media, tell them what to think. Sure that they are right in their information drink. Talking and manipulation, country on the ropes. Make sure you lead with fear for the zombies and the dopes. Glued to their devices, keep them in their head. Tell them that each other wants to see the other dead. Divide them with opinion, judge them ruthlessly. Make sure you get them angry at what the others see. People have opinions, even if they're wrong. Don't mean they're evil or know where they belong. Fill them with emotion, make them full of rage. Give them brand new statements to splatter on their page. Friendships fall to pieces, judge and then condemn. Turn it into chaos, this society of men. Everyone divided in an echo chamber hole. In love with conflict and illusions of control. Divide them with opinion, judge them ruthlessly. Make sure you keep them angry at what the others see. Divide and conquer, conquer and divide. When they leave with hatred, they don't want you to survive. That's just an illusion, a ghost with which they dance. On the floor of hatred, love doesn't have a chance. You think this, I think that, but who cares anyway? Most becoming puppets being told the words to say. In the days of outrage, void of charity, held hostage by opinion in a cage they never see. The ego deals in conflict, love is hardly free. Focus on the difference between both you and me. Divide them with opinion, judge them ruthlessly. Make sure you get them angry at what the others see. Beyond all these opinions, you and I are one. But media won't tell you that they'd rather see you run. Lead with hate and anger and cacophonies of rage. To judge each other evil, conflicts re-engage. Keep the zombies clicking as the engine revs and screams. The engine of division is the devil's best machine. But imagine for a second being led a different way. A message of forgiveness and love brought every day. Divide them with opinion, judge them ruthlessly.
Supervised contact. They watch our every move. They examine our togetherness like we've got something to prove. I've looked behind your eyes. I've seen the sadness you hide. I've looked into your eyes. I've seen the tears that you've cried. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. In the legal arena, upset theaters are staged. She moves in circles. Her cruel games cause delays. From the questions you ask me, like why can't you come home tonight? From the moment you hold me, it's the shortest hour of my life. No, I won't get used to these chains. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling. I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will know. I wanna tell you what I'm feeling. I wanna tell you what I know. Someday the truth will flow. Restricted freedoms. They say I've gotta be careful with what I say. Their conspiracy of silence. They think the truth will lead you astray. They say that they're here for you, but they never listen to what you say. They've built walls between us. I will walk through walls to break these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains.